Hello guys, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be mainly talking about an article that was posted, it was on the launch, it was on the website, but there's actually quite a lot of big news in here, and it was kind of posted without a lot of fanfare, so it seems to have slipped under the radar for a lot of people. But yeah, this is a community update, so as always, this is work in progress, so they added a disclaimer saying that everything they talk about is subject to change or delays or outright cancellation. So, take it with a pinch of salt. But these are official statements from Gaijin. So it's split into chapters down below. So if there's stuff that you're not interested in, you can just skip through that. With ground-focused stuff being on the first half and air being in the second half. The article will also be linked below, so you can check that out if you want to. But make sure that you watch the CAS section at the end so you can learn how to fly a plane with only one wing. And don't forget to smash that like and subscribe, and we'll get into it. So the first thing is the T-64 and T-80 series of tanks will be getting new modules on the inside. Now, I don't know if it will affect the more zany vehicles that use the T-64 or T-80 hull. Off the top of my head, the Object 292, for example. But if it has a 64 or an 80 in the name, it is almost certainly going to be affected. And by what, you might ask? Well, specifically autoloaders, vertical and horizontal drives for the cannon. I'll put up a side-by-side for you now from the article so you can get, kind of an idea of the scope. It's not a huge change, but it helps correct that sort of strange imbalance going on right now at top tier that particularly affects the Leopard and Abrams series. These tanks have a lot of things modeled. For example, the trunnions, which are the pivot points the gun moves around. Those are fully modeled, as well as the entire turret basket counting as the horizontal turret traverse. In other words, it's much easier to disable the aiming on these tanks than, for example, a Soviet T-Series tank or a Challenger 2. How much of this should or could apply IRL? I'm not 100%. I'm not a Challenger 2 mechanic. But I think it's interesting that certain tanks have many destructible modules, while others not so much. But again, we're diving into speculation. So as well as this, they also mentioned that all T-72 variants, T-90 variants, ZTZ-96, ZTZ-99, the VT-4, and the WZ-1001, all of these will also be receiving additional detailed tank modules. What that exactly entails, I'm not entirely sure because it doesn't specify in the article, but I would assume it's going to be things like fire control systems or electronics or other small, not super important modules, like maybe radios or something, I feel like if it was something actually important, they would have probably specified in the article. And all of these tanks in general are in some way going to be derived from the T-72. I'm pretty sure. I can't say 100% for the Chinese vehicles, but what I can say is that all of these vehicles have significantly larger autoloaders than the T-64 and 80 series that are way easier to knock out anyway. And if they were getting changes similar to the others, I think they would have mentioned it as well, right? So, but yeah, we're still quite a ways out from the update. They do mention it's going to be sometime in September, but I'm expecting it to be at least a month away, right? So again, subject to change, right? Next for ground, Japan is confirmed to be getting a Thai tank subtree, which is kind of to be expected because they recently got an air subtree for Thailand, so the fact that they're getting tanks from Thailand now as well is not a huge surprise. This is going to include the M60A3 TTS, the M163 Bertie Boy SPAA, the Commando Stingray, which is a unique tank. This has not been added yet. And also they mentioned that the USA will be getting access to this tank as well. To put it simply, think of the TAM in Germany or the CV90-105 in Sweden. a lightly armored, relatively speedy boy light tank with a 105mm cannon. They did also announce that there will be one more that they did not specify what it is. I checked the vehicles that Thailand operates, and they also operate the VT4 like China. It's Chinese. But interestingly, they also operate the T-84 Oplot T, which might make it the first Ukrainian vehicle added into the game, which would be pretty interesting. A lot of people have been wanting the T-84 for a while now, but due to ongoing circumstances, I think it's kind of obvious why Gaijin haven't added it, unfortunately. Also, they do mention the next two events that are upcoming. One of them will feature a German battle cruiser, and the other one will feature an American amphibious tank, which I find particularly interesting because we recently had an event with an American amphibious tank. But we could be looking at the Cadillac Gauge Commando, which could also be the hidden vehicle for the Thai tree, which is why I kind of put these together. Because, well, it's an amphibious American tank, sure, but again, Thailand operates this. It's an amphibious armored car that is very similar to the Italian Orbal 74, and it actually has the exact same 90mm cannon as the Orbal as well. And this company also produced the Stingray, which is confirmed to be added. So, yeah, maybe I don't know. I thought it was interesting, so I thought I'd mention it. But yeah, pure speculation here, guys. But the next big change is that scouting with a UAV will now incur a 3 times longer cooldown. But you can now also scout from the UAV directly. You don't have to switch back to your tank. Now, there is a way to abuse this mechanic right now, which I heavily featured in my Battle Pass task guide. So I won't go into like huge detail here, but needless to say, you can scout the whole enemy team super easily. And this change puts the lid on that, sadly, or not sadly, I guess, depending on your perspective. Also, the spawn point reduction for CAS is significantly reduced when a drone is doing the scouting. Or when a drone is out, it specifically says, yeah, when a drone is out. From the way it's worded, it implies that scouts from the ground also incur these cooldown and spawn point penalties if a drone is up. Which, yeah, is probably to stop the abuse that I just mentioned. So, yeah. I do think that it was a little bit exploitative, which again, I mentioned in the video, it is quite cheesy, but yeah. And now, another huge nerf for close air support, which will see actually fewer planes in the air, especially at the lower tiers. Now, to understand this change fully, I need to explain a little bit about how CAS spawns work. Right now, strike planes and bombers are grouped into one category, and fighters are in another category. So if I take out a fighter with two 1,000-pound bombs, and I go and bomb my things, and then I die, I can then spawn a strike plane or a bomber that also has two 1,000-pound bombs with no penalty, giving me 2 CAS runs with those bombs. Because they're treated as separate entities, right? Well, one's a strike plane, one's a fighter. They're not the same, right? Okay. Now, CAS spawns are being changed to has ground attack capability and does not have ground attack capability. What counts as ground attack? Bombs, rockets, AGMs, torpedoes, mines, and armor-piercing belts. All of these count as having ground attack capability. And planes that have a clean configuration using, for example, default or air belts and air-to-air missiles, if it can carry them, will count as a fighter. I say fighter because it's only carrying air-to-air ordnance, not because it has the in-game role of fighter. The actual category of the plane is now completely irrelevant. The only thing that matters is, do you have that ground attack capability? Are you running bombs? Are you running rockets or AP belts? And I know what people are going to think straight away because it's the same thing that I thought. Like, especially at certain battle ratings, cannons with universal belts can be very dangerous to open top and light tanks. And you would be 100% correct. It's definitely true that you're going to be able to take out just a regular plane as, you know, air superiority fighter, right, and still kill tanks. Like, obviously, that's still going to be possible, but it's definitely a big step up from having another plane covered in bombs and rockets coming at you. So, you know, it's a step in the right direction. It's another huge nerf for CAS and a huge step in the right direction from Gaijin, in my personal opinion. And while controversial, I actually think it's the correct decision not to penalize fighter role or air-to-air role aircraft. Because a common thing to do, especially from me, right, if I take out a CAS plane and then I get murdered by a fighter, well, I'm going to take out a fighter and shoot down that fighter and then shoot down more planes. So having the ability to still spawn combat air patrol and shoot down enemy planes with your plane is, I think, is a good thing personally. But, you know, there's the trade-off that you can also then shoot down, or not shoot down because they're ground targets, or shoot up, you know, SPAAs and light tanks and things like that. So I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I personally think it's a good thing, but if you disagree, feel free to let me know why in the comments, because I'm interested in what you guys think as well. But in other CAS obliterating news, Great Britain, USSR, Italy, and France are all getting top tier SPAAs in this next update, which will be similar to the ones added for Germany, America, Sweden, Japan, and Israel in the last update. As to what these are, it's not specified at all, and well, I'm not going to just overly pad the video with useless speculation, because I'd be going on for quite some time here. But to cut it short, I will mention that France has a ground-launched Mika system, which would be a interesting addition for CAS pilots to deal with at top tier. That's all I'm going to say. So, moving on to the air section, we're getting an expansion of the fuel dumping mechanic. I assume it was added to the F-111 first because that aircraft is particularly famous for dumping fuel and burning it at air shows. But now the Gripen, F-15, F-16, FA-18, Eurofighter, Rafale, and the entire Su-27 and 30 family, as well as the Tornado, will all be able to pull the same trick now. How useful that is remains to be seen, but at the end of the day, having more tools and more options is never a bad thing. In addition to fuel dumping, a few of the F-16s will be getting some new armaments as well. Specifically the F-16 ADF in the American tree. Again, the same aircraft, the F-16 ADF, but in the Italian tree, and the F-16A MLU in the Chinese tree will all be getting bumped up to 13.3, but they're going to get AMRAAMs as well. Now, specifically for Italy and America, this isn't really an issue because they have other planes that fill a similar role already. That role being a strong 4th gen plane that has semi-active missiles that's like, you know, 12.3, 12.7, that kind of area of the matchmaker. So in the American tree, this is currently filled by like the F-18A or the F-14A early, and Italy has the MiG-29 that again does a similar role. The problem is China doesn't actually have anything that can fill that niche. You have the J-11 and the J-8F, but they're both at 13.0, so they get perpetually up-tiered, and the JH-7 doesn't actually have any radar missiles. So then China will be left without any fighter between 11.3 and 13.0, which, you know, it's not ideal, specifically that have semi-active radar missiles. So, yeah. I think that, you know, it would be better, in my personal opinion, if the F-16 MLU was left in the place that it is in China to give them that capability, because I think it's quite a fun BR to play as well, but yeah. You lose something, you gain something, right? In addition to this, airborne radars will become interactive like ground radars are currently. You click on things and there's a button on the screen, right? Or buttons on the screen. I'll put up a screenshot here from the post, so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. You know, visual guide helps a bit. Like, for me personally, this isn't super relevant because I already have everything keybound, and it's probably quicker to use keybinds, especially in combat, than messing about with the mouse and clicking on the screen. So for me personally, it isn't super relevant because I already have all the keybinds set up, and it's probably a lot better to be using keybinds in combat anyway. However, I do think this will be a great way for people less experienced with the 20 million or so keybinds that you actually need for full radar control. It does also mean that infrequently used binds could be no longer needed, or binds that aren't used anyway in combat, like messing about with the tilt axis, which then frees up those binds to be used for something actually valuable and that can be more easily pressed when in combat. The biggest deal though is that you will now be able to lock targets by clicking on them, or double clicking on them to be more specific. And this is actually huge, because it means you won't ever need to turn off cyclic radar. For the uninitiated, if you want to focus on BVR combat, for example in the F-15E, pressing the cycle target key to change between targets when there's 16 players is a huge pain in the ass. So my method is to go into the menu before the game starts, turn off cyclic radar, and manually move the radar cursor with the arrow keys. And so with this update, that's going to become mostly irrelevant, which is personally what I'm looking forward to most with this update, especially when I'm playing top tier. Lastly, we have a confirmation now that there will be no 5th generation fighters until the second half of next year. They're saying they want to add in all of the Gen 4 Plus and 4 Plus Plus planes before they get around to that. Again, for those unfamiliar with the terms, 5th generation fighters are going to be your stealth aircraft, and 4 Plus and 4 Plus Plus are not. This is an oversimplification, but it's basically true. But yeah, there are quite a lot of planes that will be added before we see something like the F-22 Raptor. Think of like the FA-18F Super Hornet, the F-15EX Strike Eagle 2, the Gripen E, the MiG-35, and, you know, a bunch more that I can't think of at the top of my head, but you get the idea. I personally also think stealth will be a complete disaster for game balance, but I mean, honestly, I thought that about Fox 3 missiles as well, and yeah, I was sort of right, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. But again, we're drifting into speculation here, so I think I'm just gonna call it a day. Remember to smash that like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and leave a comment if you want me to go over the battle rating changes that are being proposed at the same time. Yeah, and thank you for coming, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.